completed the Masters Games here in Cleveland, Ohio, and he won the bronze medal in archery for his category, which was in the 50-plus age range. There were some 200 different countries being represented in the games. And so it was quite an event to be there, and Peter was in his archery form, ready to do some forgiveness work, and we spent 3 days just about in continuous process, didn't we, Peter?
Yeah.
And he's just pouring himself a glass of water on the other side of the room. And so it's been a really interesting event to sit in the back row behind the archers and watching the whole thing unfold, and simultaneously doing each day a session in the quantum still point process. Yesterday was so far our peak day. Lots of intensity and energy moving in that process, and Peter has graciously volunteered to share a little bit of that. So tell us about archery and what changed. We were in almost continuous processing work as you were getting up and firing at that target, and we did a lot of conversation about sin and evil, Aramaic terms for in archery for being off the mark and or missing the target altogether. So that was kind of fun. I played with a couple of other archers and explained the Aramaic terms. And one gentleman from Trinidad, each time he'd come back, say, "Yeah, I sinned on that one. Oh, I was really evil on that one." So we kind of had fun with that. So what are your thoughts, Peter?
My thoughts are that it was a blessing to have you there. As the coach, many archers had coaches, but
not this kind of coach.
Not this kind of coach. Yeah, it was completely different. We didn't talk much archery skills. We talked so much more important forgiveness. And it was such a blessing to be able to come back after me shooting and then to talk about goals and everything that was moving for me. And so the archery was, and I mean, it has been like that for me all the time, but archery is a parable for life, really. And it didn't go exactly as I wanted. And that's also part.
You were ready to have the gold rather than the bronze?
Yeah.
Cancel some gold?
Shoot better, higher results. So yes, but that is, again, sort of like life. There is a tendency that it doesn't go exactly as I want. And what is it that you say? The trifling
treasure put away. Leave a clean and open space within your mind. So, for what to happen? It was a interesting, after our second still point session, Peter came out of the session with a direct experience that I thought was pretty profound. Peter's from Sweden, and we had talked about the fact that Sweden is not a country that is particularly oriented toward at least the brand of Christianity that shows up in America, or Christianity at all. And yet, as you came out of that second still point session, I thought the comment you made was just brilliant. I was like, that's so on target for what the Aramaic idea is of the whole work of this man named Yeshua. And that comment, do you remember exactly what it was? Would you like to share? I think it's better you say it. So he came out of the still point session after completion, and clearly his facial expression was in a whole different place than where we started. And he's like, "Oh, I got it. This isn't about being a born-again Christian. This is about Christ being born." And that connectedness, well, I'll let you explain what that meant for you, but it was just, to me, it was just so brilliant from the direct experience, the transformation, moving beyond what the general language is and what that meant for you.
Yeah, it was more of an experience, total centeredness, being anchored in being, in love. And the words, like I say, it's not something that Christianity and what have you, it's not something that I partake in Sweden, but just it was so clear that it was the experience, that the being was the Christ, that of Christ mind. And it was, that was with me. It was so clear when I was on the table during the session that Michael's comment of there are no stressful situations in life. And I've heard that many times, and I kind of, yeah, right. But while on the table, while having that experience of like Christ being born, that state of mind, that going to the archery range and from that realizing that there are no stressful situations, because typically for me and for most other archers was pretty obvious that the stress rises the further into the competition we go, and it was so clear that that is because all of a sudden I have goals. When the goals are not there for performing well or doing well or a specific result or what have you, I remain in that beingness. And if I don't remain in that beingness, then there's direct feedback to me, just like it is with the archery, that if I shoot, like you say, with the sin, it's direct feedback, you're missing the mark. And if I then experience the negative stress, I should say, not stress, but the negative stress, i.e. hostility or fear, it's a feedback for me, just like with the archery, it's a feedback for me that I'm missing the mark, and I have some goals that is driving that perception for me. And it was on the table, it was so clear that it is available to live life from that position, centered, anchored. And it wasn't as clear the next day on the archery range, but I have experienced it again.
It was interesting because we sat, there's an archer's line, and as an observer, we weren't allowed to cross it. But it was interesting to watch the interaction with, there were probably 20 archers within earshot of us out of the field of a couple of hundred people, and to watch how relaxed and easygoing they were until it was time for them to step up to the competition, and to just watch their conversations with each other, the stress levels, and how when the goal to hit the mark was loaded in the mind, literally the physiological changes we could observe in people, the conversations changed dramatically as they're sitting back, relaxed, they're not involved in the competition at this moment. But then as they're getting called up to the line, just watching the energy between people and the conversations change, and realizing the importance. And in 50 years of doing this work, one of the things I've done is over the years many stress workshops where they can tell you lots of ways to overcome your stress, but I've never seen anywhere in the world any expert on stress that can tell you what causes stress. And this, coming out of Yeshua's first century Aramaic language, the answer is just right there. And the passage where the Greeks translate him saying, "Sufficient for the day are the evils thereof," evil being in Aramaic unripened or something that's incomplete, that if you manage your stress, that means that you're managing your goals and you're not overloading your goals or your whole operating system, overloading your mind, which is your operating system, with goals that elevate stress to the point where the whole organism starts to break down because it's overloaded with stress. And that the core of forgiveness has to do with managing your stress. And when you keep stress at reasonable levels, all of the resources of your mind, very much like with your computer when you have your the map program open and you have your email open and you have your word processing program open, and then you open your CAD program, the computer starts to falter and break down. It's precisely the same thing when we set a goal. It's like opening another program, and there are only so many resources available. So that brilliant piece of information from 2,000 years ago, when you understand it in the Aramaic context, is just monumental. And this is a major core of his teaching from 2,000 years ago, and it does not shine through in the slightest in the Greek language. What does it mean? Sufficient for the day are the evils thereof. But understanding that in Aramaic, he's talking about keep your goals to the next waking period, and you are managing your stresses, and therefore all of the capacity and all the resources that you have are available to you. I mean, it's just such a monumental piece of information. And that forgiveness has to do with lowering your stress level so that you have a greater capacity to process whatever is out of line within you and step up to the plate with a more capable mind, body. The whole structure is simply more capable when its stresses are at acceptable levels. It's just like, it's monumental. Just monumental. So it was pretty interesting. Ms. Jeannie, do you have any thoughts to share as you engaged in the competition and were there with Peter?
Well, and
or
kind
saw
of
the aftermath of it and then we came back on the day that you weren't there?
I just really like how the parallel to the archery, we were talking about being on purpose and being on target and keeping your focus on the target that you're shooting at. And he was talking about how when sometimes they just had the bail up there, they didn't have the actual target showing, and they could shoot and practice or whatever, and there was no stress. And as soon as that bullseye was put up there, that it changed the stress level, just the appearance. I mean, nothing else changed, appearance before them, And I just thought the similarities between the archery and what we teach and being on purpose and everything, how it's just so much alike, and it was awesome. It was a great experience, and I am thankful for it. I'm thankful to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's actually been a really interesting week. And then with the quantum still point.
Well, first, Michael was talking so much, also connected to quantum still point, about alignment of the antenna, and that is the major key within the archery as well, that if you align properly, it goes well. It's just like that. And like you say, Jeannie, without the target phase, the alignment, I can only speak for myself, it works fluently, easily, and everything is like a breeze. You put up the target phase, and I can actually feel how my form changes, my body, my physiology changes, and realizing that, again, there are goals that change my whole experience.
Yeah, and the question I would ask, or if you looked closer at that, was it really your physiology that changed? Or was it your thoughts that changed when you elevated a goal to win? Was it your thoughts that changed, and did that reflect as a change in your physiology?
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be, when you take it to another level, that setting that goal introduces or resonates content in the mind that the body's going to recruit when we set that goal in the mind, whatever is within the structure, on target or off target. And that the real change that happens, whether, one of the things Peter said several times as well, I can get up there and the target or the bail is there, but there's no target on it. It's like easy, boom, just no thought. But then the changes in the mind when the target's there and I'm supposed to hit the bullseye. If the bullseye isn't there, you can hit it easily, but if it's there, all of a sudden, the mind changes, and when the mind changes, physiology changes. And that's why with the quantum still point, we're working both with physiology opening the places where historically stresses tend to be locked into the structure and accessing, in some cases, ancient stresses that need to be cleared out of the structure, or should I say ancient energetic patterns that are accessed by goals, by stress. And clearing them out leaves the whole structure more available to perfection at any given moment.
And back to what you said before about thoughts and affecting physiology. In the beginning, it was the mind energy, and the mind energy became flesh. And it's so instantaneous. I mean, I go up there, I have other thoughts, and I can perceive how my physiology change like that. My form changes. All of a sudden, it's difficult, whereas before it was ease.
Right. All in response to a goal.
All in response to a goal. And that's something I'll ask again, because I've asked already, but I'll ask again. So going up there, knowing this, so then I go up to the line and I think, well, I'm not going to think about that.
Don't think about the color of the
I'm
car.
not going to think about that. And that's not working.
Well, it's because you can't not think about something. If I say don't think about the color of your car, and somebody says, well, I'm not thinking about it, what is it you're not thinking about? Obviously, it has to resonate before you can say I'm not thinking about it. And so once you set mind, energy in motion, physiology responds instantly. And what I found or learned in watching you and watching the archers was just how, as you say, instantaneously, pardon me, instantaneously physiology responds to just a simple change in thought. And to unload, forgive the thoughts based in hostility or fear. I remember there was one round, I don't remember exactly what the work was that you did before, but you did some work. You went up to the line and you shot a 9 and a 9 and a 10, which is almost perfect. And it correlated with what you had processed just before you got up. That you were able to maintain the physiology like you go bang, 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 with those arrows in place. That was pretty interesting. Pretty interesting.
So yes, then archery is easy, and yes, then life is easy.
It's a perfect metaphor for life.
Yeah.
And there was also a time, I don't remember exactly, you probably will, where, there were other archers and, there was not really an issue, shooting against them or whatever, competing against them. But then there was one that came up and he had on like his professional master's uniform and all of this, and how just the guy's appearance brought up intimidation for you.
Very much so.
And what did you do with the intimidation that came up?
Unfortunately, I wrote it, so I didn't shoot as well as I was. Yeah, that was the guy who was actually part of the U.S. national team, and he was wearing that shirt the first day. So I mean, I had that with me the whole 3 days, all 3 days, and then I was facing him in the semifinals, and I didn't win that match. That was the one match that I didn't win, and the reason for that was because of that intimidation that was.
It was still hanging out.
Yeah, it was still.
Had not cleared it out.
I had not cleared it out.
Yeah, interesting.
And also, like I said, don't think of the color of your car. And I was even entertaining thinking other thoughts in order to not
block that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that also.
Well, hiding that one isn't leaving it alone. It isn't leaving it behind, covering it up with something else. And that's, a lot of people in the culture play this game of, well, I'm just going to be a positive thinker. But if I positive think on top of a stress or a negative energy, all I'm doing is hiding it from myself. That doesn't stop it from impacting my physiology. What does stop it is giving myself the space to access it. And again, the genius of Yeshua and the idea of forgiveness, that the word in Aramaic for forgiveness is to cancel, shabak, to cancel, to let loose, to untie. And when I realize that I've created a stress with a goal, when I can cancel that goal, then I can process the underlying energy that creates the behavior that's off the mark. And when I allow myself to process that, rather than what the world pretty much teaches us to do is just hide it from ourselves, pretend it's not there, try to override it, where the opposite is so profoundly powerful to embrace it. And in our session yesterday, and you were sharing this morning as we were doing some processing around your quantum still point session yesterday, that I did some physiological work that created some openings in what I perceive, what I see as the antenna structure of the body. And knowing that the shape of an antenna determines the frequencies it receives, if the antenna is locked up and doesn't move through its proper range of motion, then there are energetic patterns that don't belong, that we get lost in. And so we did some physiological work and then invited Ruka Dekucha, and recognizing the actuality of that. What Peter shared is that after I moved my hands away from the physiological work that I had done, what happened, having invited Ruka into activity?
It continued, it amplified, it was totally amazing. I was thinking about it now before the show, that I feel really, really strong, actually more stable, I guess is maybe a better word.
Physiologically?
Yeah, whole being, both thought and physiologically. I feel really centered, and that was a really intense experience that I've never had before. You suggested to invite Ruka, and in the space that I was in, I followed suit on that, and I invited, and I did that continuously in my mind, and it opened pathways that I didn't know existed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Since we don't have a visual medium, we can't do it visually, but Jeannie and I were sitting with Peter this morning, doing some processing around his session from last night, and he visually demonstrated where the energy was moving, and kind of to give it a way of communicating verbally what we saw visually. He demonstrated with his hands the motion that took place as I was doing the energy field work on him, so what I was impacting. And then he demonstrated what Ruka did that followed up when I took my hands away. And the demonstration moved from, let's say, on a scale of 1 to 10, the physiological work that I was doing on him was maybe a 2, and then he demonstrated visually with his hands where the energy went from there, and it went from a 2 to an 8 when I let go and Ruka took over. And it's just such profound verification that there is this energy force within us. I think in our modern language we could call it the super processor, that when invited into activity, that just goes to a whole different level than anything we could do physiologically. So that was a cool demonstration when you worked with your hands and showed what my hands had done, and then what happened when my hands disappeared, that how much it expanded. So it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, moved by the Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it takes on a whole. One of the things that, for me, keeps coming across time and time again, especially since I've started doing the quantum still point with people, is the immediacy and the present application of the principles. i.e., Christianity talks about it in sometimes fantastical ways. And none of it's about Sunday morning, none of it's about church. It can be applied there as anywhere. But that it's just energy-wise, when we think of ourselves as energy beings, that these principles were just immediate, physiological, mental, emotional, and tangible where we live in the world. It's not something we have to wait on for Sunday morning. Or I was actually reading a response that a rabbi gave. Someone asked a rabbi the question, why are there atheists? And I thought the rabbi's answer was pretty cool. And he said, well, the atheist gives us the gift, especially when they do something decent, that they're not doing it because God said do it. They're doing it because they're human beings and they're functioning as we're designed to. And the rabbi finished his answer with, so when someone asks if you can help them, rather than telling, well, we'll pray for you that God will help you, get off your duff and do the assist that you were asked to do. Offer that. So become an atheist and do it just because that's what human beings do. I thought that was a pretty cool metaphor for how immediate these tools are in one's life and how applicable they are where we live with our families. And, that was another really sweet piece of the puzzle. That Peter has a son who was at Heartland with him 20-some years ago, 26 years ago now. And of course, his son, Elliot, was 2 at that point. What was he there? From the age he was about maybe 1.5 or 2 years? 2 years. Yeah. And, of course, generational patterns of fathers and sons have had their way of rearing their head in your relationship with him, and the processing that you're doing around your relationship with your son, and that each time you went back and put the load on yourself of needing to be perfect, needing to be better, needing to do something different, and then judging yourself for how you didn't measure up to that, which is a power person dynamic, and how you replayed that with your son to some degree, and that each time we were able to go back. So now let's imagine that Elliot's a year. Do you have a goal for him? Does he have to perform? Is there anything he needs to do aside from just be that sweet presence of love that he is? To me, that was a really nice piece of the puzzle, and it'll be interesting to hear your reports when you head back to Sweden and interact with your precious, beautiful presence of love that's your son. And then when you look in the mirror, because we then move that to the next level of, so now, Peter, as you think about you have to perform, what about you yourself being that beautiful, precious presence of love? At 1 year of age, it's like no goals for the 1-year-old. They're just being. And how our culture puts into our minds all of these generational patterns of insufficiency, of not being good enough, having to perform, being to blame, just all of those dynamics that need to be just cleared out of our family systems and out of our world, because it's definitely becoming something in the culture today because of political expediency that many, many people need to start to deal with in a different way than what we are, or we're going to be back into another layer of trouble like we had several decades ago on the planet. It's so immediate, it's so where we live that it excites me to realize it on new levels every time. And normally up until now when I've done the quantum still point, it's just been a 3-day process. And because Peter was traveling so far, we decided to go ahead and we're doing a 5-day process. So yesterday was day 4, or pardon me, today we're heading into day 5. And it's been pretty intense. Maybe you could share a little bit about how that's progress for you, what that looks like for you, Peter. And or Jeannie, if you have any thoughts as you've observed it, because after last night's session, and as I came into the other room, she's like, "What are you doing in there?" I said, "Well, nothing, just in process." Got her a little bit cockeyed, said, "Are you ready now?" And she, I think, took a breath and sort of said, "Not yet, but..." Anything to share in that regard, either for you, Jeannie, or Peter? Not everybody at once. Jeannie first. Any thoughts for you, Jeannie? Peter's waiting for you. And I wonder, Jeannie, she's actually got the car in Firestone, so maybe they've come to talk to her about what they're doing. We heard a noise in the brakes, so she took it in this morning to have them look at it. So she may not be available at the moment. So any other thoughts for you, Peter?
Well, for me, like I mentioned before, it was such a blessing to have you there at the archery range, and even more so with doing this process work. Like, the archery has been an active mind shifter for me for 3 days. It's bringing up so much stuff for me, and then having the wonderful opportunity to then do process work after that every day. And if we look, not to rate them, but it has been getting more and more intense, and yesterday being the 4th day, being the day without the archery, it was by far the most intensive day. And yeah, what else to say? That it's especially this thing with you're the one suggesting Vaidruka, and having done that in that space changed everything for me. And that's the prayer going ahead, that to be able to keep that more and more readily available in my life.
One of the things that impacted me, and I got to process when we were on the archery range, was along about day 3, a lot of the conversation shifted out of the goal to, win the competition and such, and to play archery rather than compete against an opponent. And then the last couple of rounds, I thought it was pretty amazing, because what Peter did was got up, when they called his round of archers to come up. Each time, the last couple of rounds, he was talking about how he was simply going to be a blessing for his competition, rather than competition for his competition. And holding, in particular, there was one guy there who was not very good, and I think it was a new state for you to step into, because this fellow who was losing and not very good, and obviously wasn't feeling very good about what was happening, that Peter stepped up beside him to do another round of shooting. And the whole conversation was about being a space of compassion for this guy, and then compassion for each of the competitors. And that gave me a chance to look at, so you're up there, and of course I know you, I want you to win. So what do I do with this guy who's standing beside you that's your competition? I had to make this choice, which, impacts the way I live my life too, because it is that perfect metaphor. But do I hold the space as guy misses the mark while you hit it? And what I found myself doing was just holding space for you to do the best that you could do as you shot, and holding the space for your competitor to do the best that he could do when he shot, and let the result be the result, rather than, because it went through my mind that when you first got up in one of the rounds and your competitor was there, it went through my mind of, well, I don't want him to make this shot. It's like, no, Michael, that's not where you want to live. That's not what being does. And it shifted for me into holding the goal for this person to do the best at archery that they could do, as with you, and let the outcome be the outcome. So it shifted something for me, and it's a little bit awkward or difficult to define, but I shifted the way that I would see anyone in my world, that the way our world works is so set for competition, and really truly being the space for anybody else, even if it's the person that seems to quote unquote be against me, and I hold the space for them to do the highest and best. And what does it do to my energy system when I offer that gift? So it was cool to see you getting up, speaking about compassion for each other archer rather than I'm going to win. That was impactful for me. That's pretty cool. And of course, has ramifications everywhere in my life for anybody that I look at, that I interact with in my real day-to-day world. That choosing to be in that space of being, regardless of the outcomes the world have trained us, are so important. Because when I hold to winning is the key, then I have to sacrifice something in me to do that. When I hold that being is the key and who wins. For me, it's shifted. It's kind of been a minor, but still a major shift for me energetically to look at that. And the kind of space that I hold for anybody else in my life or my world, in any corner of my world. So that was an interesting gift from you shifting into and speaking toward those latter rounds that last day, speaking compassion for these others, which is not anything you'd spoken about. At least that I recall you speaking about the days previously. It was definitely a very powerful shift.
The line that comes to thought is exempt no one from your love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a powerful one. Actually, do you remember what the rest of that line is?
No.
So what it says is, exempt no one from your love, or you will be hiding a darkened place within yourself where the Holy Spirit's healing power is not welcome.
So that's exactly what you were explaining now, your process.
That's perfect to bring that thought up. Yeah, that's it exactly. Yeah. And the objective of this work is to open every darkened space within each of our own energy fields, that when we hide them from ourselves, we can project on somebody else and think it's somebody else's fault.
And therefore, again, this Jason guy, because he was the national team,
right.
when you're sharing this, that was that person. And that is also so clearly then my opportunity, because as I shared here now, that because of the intimidation that was running somewhere in me, I lost that match, right? And so again, life's purpose is to take us in an invitation. He was the perfect gift for me in bringing that up and showing that.
And I'm trying to think if it was, I think it was right after that one round that you started to speak compassion for each other competitor.
Yeah, and I remember I came over and sat with you because you were sitting a bit further away, and I came over and sat there, and I just lost, and I felt a burst of joy, and I was like, I stopped. It's like, because I wanted to win, just like you say, I wanted to win big time,
yeah.
And I could experience a burst of joy. It's like,
even in the loss of the round.
I just lost, and I went over there and I just sat down and had that experience.
Yeah, well, that's where we brought up that definition from Teilhard de Chardin. And if you go online and Google Teilhard de Chardin, there's at least one program that you can watch. I think it's a PowerPoint type presentation, but Chardin's work is something that I worked with back in the 70s. And he was a paleontologist. And at the same time as being a paleontologist scientist, he was a Catholic priest. And one of the things, and you've heard me, mention this many times over the years, the statement that Chardin came out with, which I adjust slightly because it's just slightly off, but his definition of joy is it's the infallible sign of the presence of God, which, of course, if that were true, no matter what happens, we'd all be in joy continuously. We just need to add one word to that definition, and that is that joy is the infallible sign of the awareness. And so even in the context of, gee, I just lost the round, because you stayed connected to your source, joy is the natural result, even in the context of, oh, my mind should be going, oh, I lost. And like, what's losing got to do relative to standing in the space of being? So that's powerful.
And you asked before the feedback from the experience of the quantum still point. And that whole, from coming up from the table one day, I came up and said that I am here to be love and to bless my opponents, to bless everyone. So the gentle art of blessing, that's why I'm here.
Putting the arrow in the bullseye.
That's why I'm here. And then that was so clear at the table, leaving the table, after the session. It wasn't as clear as I was approaching the archery line,
right?
But still, it was there somewhere, lingering. So even though I lost that match, and that was due to then the fear coming up and moving that, but it's still, like you say, it was somewhere, it was present.
So, and I just opened my notes because as a result of you sharing that on the archery range, I made this note, and that was winning or losing this, i.e. this round of archery means nothing, but winning and holding to my human life, that's what changes my life, that's what changes my family, that's what changes the world. Each person does that. And then arriving, yeah. And so that's the note that I made that I'm going to integrate into the quantum still point process of developing. So thank you for that insight when you came back and this last and I've enjoyed. I'm experiencing joy. It's like, yeah, like what mind has all sorts of short-term things, and we've been trained by the world to trade it in, that short-term thing for what's it really all about. And when you take that back to your relationship with Elliot, your relationship with Philip, your relationship with Anya, it's going to open whole new spaces for you and everybody in the family system. And each person does that, opens a whole new space for everyone in the world. That insight from Max Planck, I shared it, but it fits again really powerfully because it addresses exactly this. So here's what Max Planck said. Pardon me, this is not Max Planck, Carl Jung, psychiatrist. It says, the healer is not just working for a particular patient, but for himself, herself as well, and his or her own soul. And in so doing is perhaps laying an infinitesimal grain in the scales of humanity's soul. Small and invisible as this contribution may be, it is yet an opus magnum. We realize our act right there changes the world in the context of actuality. And so often we trade in winning for that opus magnum that he described. It just, when I found that quote, it just opened my mind on a whole other level. That man's an energy field I would have loved to spend some time in. Carl Jung, that would have been pretty awesome.
That's the religion I've been raised in, winning.
Yeah.
That's the religion.
Yeah.
All walks of life. And that's nothing that coming up the table, I had that thought that you shared, Albert Einstein, if you think of this separate optical illusion. That fits also with embracing the opponent as he and I are one.
And it occurs to me, and I'm making note right now as we say it, that while winning is sweet, it's nice, it's important, there's something much bigger. And if you look at the conflict of the world's in today, why is anybody at war? It's because of that goal of winning rather than being. And, we can have both and let go of the need to win when there's a cost to being. But really, winning is literally the cause of war, and how much of that has gone on the planet for how long? It's like it's time to step up to the plate, and for each person's healing process to be their opus magnum. Is that a term that fits in the Swedish language, opus magnum? Yeah. Great film, if you haven't seen it, Mr. Holland's Opus. If you're listening and you haven't seen the film Mr. Holland's Opus, it's really a powerful film. Have you seen it?
I think so.
Well, it's a story, and I'm trying to think of the actor.
Richard Dreyfuss.
Dreyfuss, yeah. And Richard Dreyfuss is a musician in the film, and his thing is he wants to be a world-famous musician, but he's got a family, he's got to pay bills, so he ends up temporarily becoming a teacher. And his temporary becoming a teacher, because of life circumstances and financial needs and such, he spends his whole life as a teacher. And the upshot, he considers his life a failure because he didn't do his opus magnum, which was become the great musician. And the upshot of the film is the celebration where hundreds of his students come together whose lives have been touched, and it becomes his opus magnum. Pretty powerful film, pretty sweet if you haven't seen it. And it, as I think about it, it's exactly the principle we're talking about is purpose for being overrode the goal to be the big musician, to impress the world with how great a musician he was. And while he was busy suffering over that, he created opus magnum, changed the world, changed hundreds of lives. Person to write their own opus magnum. And let's check and see if Miss Jeannie's with us. Sweetie, are you free of your conversations with the folks at Firestone who are looking at the car?
I am walking home.
You're walking home. That means you've left it there to get brakes done?
Brakes plus a rocker arm has broke. So anyway, they said they'd have it done by 5, and I didn't feel like sitting there for 3 more hours. So I am walking home.
Okay.
And I think we had a hand up. Let me get in the shade tree here where I can see my phone screen.
Okay.
Yes. And I believe, it just disappeared. It was Miss Audrey, but as soon as I said, let me look at the screen, it dropped off. So.
Okay. Well, let's see if she comes back on, dials back in. In the meantime, any thoughts or comments on the conversation? So.
Here is a 541. I don't think this is Audrey. I think this might be Celinda. 541, you're on the air.
Yes, it is. How are you this fine
Welcome,
morning?
young lady. How are you?
I'm good. I'm nursing an injured foot.
Blessings to your foot.
Fine. Pardon?
Blessings to your foot and increases in your understanding.
Yes, there you go, sir. I just have one simple comment. When you were talking about your space, Michael, being opened up about what's really important here when Peter was shooting and you wanted him to win, I have begun applying your insight in the arena of the of politics, about just opening the wide open space of blessing everyone for doing the best they can,
Right.
given the tools they have. And so I'm totally neutral about the political process. I know how I need to follow my heart, and I know that I'm tired of zero-sum games and winning and losing. So I just want an open playing field with no mandates and no fixing or rigging of the game. And so I'm just doing the best I can to stay right in the middle path and bless everything and everyone. It's a challenge. I came up against my stuff and my reactivity all the time, but bless it. I just bless it and ask to be shown. And I'm working through my challenges.
Well, I realize, and this is like a kind of a mini play of life, these games that we attended, is that I could still sit in the space of holding the goal for Peter to win,
right,
without doing anything other than holding a blessing for his opponent. That I didn't have to, down or curse his opponent in order to hold the space for him to win. And by so doing, I got to win because I got to hold on to my human life. Where when we step into that space of cursing another, of course, what we offer to another, we create for ourselves.
Exactly. And just holding that space for the highest and best of the one that we are supporting, and to be able to extend that support at the same time, and let everything come out as life intends for it to come out.
Well, so my take is I don't think life has an intention for us. I think that we're the leader on life for the intention. What's our highest and best purpose, and we get to guide life into a direction. And my take is in that directive where they said, in the creation story, they tell us that the Creator said, "Go forth and multiply," which most people listen to, and then they said, and what the Creator ostensibly said there is, "Replenish the face of the earth," which in Aramaic, that word means bring to completion, hold a vision for, and that vision will guide us in bringing about the next highest and best possibility that we're capable of.
Sweet. Thank you for that perspective. I really appreciate it. I'm widening my open-mindedness because it has been very narrow in the past. And I'm enjoying the lateral expansion of my viewpoint.
Well, you remind me of the quote from Einstein where he talks about that our task as human beings, and I don't have the quote right in front of me, but basically what he says is our task as human beings is to widen our circle of compassion, to embrace all of humanity, all of life. And doing that while setting a direction for our lives definitely provides many opportunities to learn forgiveness, many goals that bring up those limiting energetic patterns from the past that need to be forgiven. If we're constantly on guard, we can clear out layer by layer by layer and just keep uplifting and moving forward into the next highest and best possibility, not just for ourselves, but for all of humanity. And to me, that's one of the objectives of the work, is to inspire and to learn ourselves and to inspire others to join in moving in that direction.
Because we're all one.
Yeah, that's it. Yes. Yep, there's only one of us. That other quote of Einstein, if you think you're separate or separated from the rest of humanity, you're living in an optical delusion. We ourselves definitely in one body, and to carry the whole forward is monumental. So joining you in that and healing your foot, and I hope your garden's doing okay with your foot limiting you, if it is.
Well, I haven't been able to get into it to water it, so it's just going to have to maintain until I can get there. I have a little kudos for Peter. Thank you, Peter, for this whole process that you have been experiencing, and know very well that as you are healing, I get to heal. Everyone gets to heal. And thank you for that blessing.
Thank you. And thank you for the same. You know, I've been watching you do your work for a few years now, and it's awesome to watch how you open from one level to another, to another, to another, and just keep bringing that presence of love forward. That's pretty awesome.
Yep, and as I go down the rabbit hole, I laugh now and say, ooh-wee, what's at the other end, the dead end or the portal to the Christ mind?
There you go.
There we go. Takes a whole brain and a whole community.
Sweet, and you remind me with that statement. Yeah, you remind me with that statement to express appreciation for everybody in this community that is supporting, carrying this work forward. And by the way, to just bring into the fray, Urate, I was talking with her this morning, and a couple of days ago, Tom, and you've heard both of them on the show in previous times. They live in Cincinnati. And Tom went through, I guess it's 3 days ago, an event with his heart that left him in ICU for a day or two. And he's up and out the other side with a couple of broken ribs because some CPR was done on him. And Urate told me this morning that the doctors assured her that if you're doing CPR properly, you're probably going to break a couple of ribs, which apparently has happened. But just invite the community to hold both Urate and Tom in a presence of love. And he's out the other side of the event. They still don't know what happened or why, but he's coming back strong and doing well. So,
well, thank you for that, Michael, because Urate has been on my mind for quite a while, and I'm glad to know that they are both alive and that they are both still growing, and it is all for the highest and best. So I will bless them and keep them in my heart.
Awesome. Well, joining you and holding a space for them and everybody else in the community, thank you, Peter, for the work you're doing, for the willingness, and the lessons that we're both getting from it.
Thank you.
All right. Well, everybody, thanks for joining us. Create the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the